I'm excited to introduce my latest story, which is titled, A Woman's Worst Nightmare. It tells the story of a young woman named Chiwonizo who experiences an inexplicable, paranormal, and heartrending journey. A Woman's Worst Nightmare is not a horror story, but it reveals horrors that Chiwonizo encounters, and it shows what can happen when the past intrudes on the present. This story explores the subject of a deceased vengeful spirit, which is known among the Shona people of Zimbabwe as Ngozi. It opens a can of worms and holds up a mirror for society to continue to effectively tackle this thorny issue. What spurred me to write this story, you may ask? A few years ago, I came across a series of articles that were published in a Zimbabwean newspaper, The Herald. The articles touched on the plight of 4 teenage girls who were handed over to be married to surviving members of a deceased avenging spirit, to appease Ngozi that was ravaging their families. These stories touched my heart and I vowed to tackle the issue through Chiwonizo's horrendous story. To shed light on the Ngozi phenomenon, let's dig deeper into the subject. Among the Shona people of Zimbabwe, there is a widespread belief that Ngozi is the wrath of the spirit of a deceased that returns to haunt and mete out vengeance against the perpetrator, his or her children, and extended family. This is because the Shona cultural belief is that the dead continue to exist in their families and the community as spirit beings and still have an influence on the lives of the living. It is believed that once Ngozi is committed, the only solution is Kurapira Ngozi, which translates to appeasing and compensating a deceased vengeful spirit. It is also believed that failure to do so will cause calamities such as successive and ominous deaths of family members and strange illnesses that cannot be diagnosed or treated by medical doctors. The process of appeasing and compensating the Ngozi crisis involves payment of compensation to the avenging spirit, which is performed by an experienced and capable traditional healer, who is believed to have the spiritual powers of solving the Ngozi crisis. A compensatory fine includes cattle, sheep, and goats, or it can be a monetary payment. However, extreme cases have been reported where the deceased avenging spirit has demanded the perpetrator's family to pledge a young woman to be married off to a surviving male relative of the deceased. Once a young woman has been chosen to be a sacrificial lamb, she cannot object to the decision of her family as she is regarded as their ticket to freedom. So, it is against her will that she becomes Makazi Ngozi, wife of an avenging spirit. Besides facing the terrible pain and shame of being Makazi Ngozi, she receives frequent nocturnal visitations from the deceased avenging spirit, which manifests in her dreams and makes love to her while she is asleep, leaving her with pain, fear, and mental anguish. This spiritual manifestation is commonly known by Zimbabweans as spirit husband. Due to the awareness of women's rights in Zimbabwe, handing over a young woman in payment of Kurapira Ngozi is a crime as it violates women's rights. The Zimbabwe Domestic Violence Act of 2007 prohibits forced marriages, but there are cases where some families have broken this law and pledged young women as sacrificial lambs to save their families from the devastating effects of Ngozi. Christianity teaches that Ngozi is an impersonating demonic and supernatural entity that appears in the form of an apparition that purports to be the spirit of the dead. It is in this regard that Zimbabwean Christian women who are affected by Ngozi choose to address the phenomenon of Ngozi by flocking to charismatic Pentecostal churches. They place their fervent faith and trust in Jesus Christ for their divine deliverance and exorcism, which is performed by Christian deliverance ministers, who operate under the unction of the Holy Spirit. On the other hand, proponents of African traditional religion argue that the harrowing nightmare of the spiritual stronghold of Ngozi and spirit husband cannot be settled with divine prayer, deliverance, and exorcism. To find out which route Chiwonizo chose to follow to rid herself of her nightmare, tune into my YouTube channel over the following weeks, as I will unfold her incredible story, in first-person narration. I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. It would be my dream come true if I could turn my literary story into a cinematic one. It was after I watched a movie called Where the Crawdads Sing, which originated as a book that was written by Delia Owens, that I got the inspiration to adapt A Woman's Worst Nightmare into a feature film. Just putting it out there. Is there a film producer and a sponsor who are willing to partner with me on this project? In conclusion, I'd like to ask whether you believe in the phenomenon of Ngozi and a spirit husband. Please leave your comment below. Goodbye for now.